Bardzo jestem wdzięczny organizatorom za zaproszenie, bo to jest zawsze wspaniały pretekst, żeby móc przyjechać do Krakowa, spotkać przyjaciół. W tym na przykład chciałem wspomnieć swojego kolegę Alexisa, który obecnie jest tutaj konsulem generalnym Francji. Pamiętam, jak pracowaliśmy razem pod koniec lat 90. w kwaterze głównej. Jakoś nie przewidywaliśmy, że w takich okolicznościach się będziemy spotykać, ale bardzo mnie to cieszy. Mam pewien problem, o którym już został zasygnalizowany, że to strasznie dużo zostało i bardzo mądrych i ciekawy sposób rzeczy powiedziane. Jednym z problemów nazywa się Jamie Shee, który przyjmował mnie do pracy w 1979 roku i to jest problem, którym często się borykamy w kwaterze, mianowicie jak ktoś ma możliwość, obowiązek przemawiać, zabierać głos pod Jamiem, to rzeczywiście lepiej, żeby nie próbował rywalizować, jeśli chodzi o atrakcyjność wypowiedzi i głębię myśli. Ale ponieważ takie mam zadanie, więc nie będę starał się rywalizować, nie mówiąc o innych znakomitych oczywiście mówcach, ale chciałem mieć takie może spojrzenie. Tak, Chicago, ale troszkę wyjść może poza ramy tej rozmowy, która się toczy jakby z punktu widzenia, co jest oczywiste, jak gdyby naszej rodziny natowskiej i europejskiej, prawda? Chcę jak gdyby wykorzystać swoje pewne doświadczenia już z pracy w Rosji, w Moskwie, żeby może popatrzeć na to troszkę oczyma innych krajów, no, posiłkując się często spojrzeniem rosyjskim, które czasami jest powielane przez innych. I z Państwa pozwoleniem przejdę w tym momencie na jeden z dwóch oficjalnych języków NATO, czyli na język angielski. So what are those, and I'll try to be slightly provocative, so I picked three major strands of criticism which are leveled at NATO from outside, and then I'll try to answer them, and then I'll say a few words about NATO-Russia relationship as it is today. First of all, we've heard a lot already about NATO operations, both current ones such as Afghanistan, the ones that we have just, in our view, successfully concluded in Libya, and even some past ones. And there is this sort of pattern of criticism outside our, as I say, NATO-European family that NATO is beating the drum of success a little bit too loudly because, well, we have not really succeeded, certainly not fully in Afghanistan. We have, according to many, made big mistakes, even undertaking such operations, and then consequences of those operations, such as in Libya, are actually not that appealing. Not to mention a very popular sort of criticism that somehow NATO has a desire to become the gendarme du monde, to sort of have a master plan where it would like to operate. Well, one of the most interesting answers to this part of the criticism I actually read today in the interview that the French ambassador in Moscow, Mr. Jean de Grignaste, has given to Commissar, and he said this was about the Arab Spring events and the aftermath. And he said, look, at the end of the day, if you want to ask me a direct question, he also referred to some developments in other countries, which NATO is not directly involved with, but I think you know what I have in mind. And the point is, yes, we as the NATO allied European, Euro-Atlantic community are willing to take the risks with democracy, because that's the way we are. We don't mastermind the future of different countries. But here I refer to, I think, very wise words mentioned by Dr. Pottering today. I mean, if I translate properly from German, security is not everything, but without security we have nothing. And again, being here in Krakow, you only have to walk around the Grand Place. You only have to admire the beauty of this place accumulated over the ages, and the wonderful things which we can find in museums and so on. We have things to protect. And that is really the issue, I think, when we think about operations, about NATO's engagement. We don't do engagements because it's a sort of politically correct thing to do. I mean, I won't even go there in this in the direction of this almost provocative suggestion that somehow we've decided to as an organization to engage in Libya because of oil or such things. Well, you could always make the opposite case, right? Not to mention Afghanistan and so on. But the point is important because NATO has been able to make a difference together with other organizations, which is another obvious constatation. We don't operate in a vacuum. Look at Paris. You have the NATO ships, you have the European Union ships, you have, you know, ships from China, from Russia, from India, others. And that's not just the shape of things to be, that's the way things are now. But NATO is indispensable in all this. And therefore, you know, take piracy. Okay, this is still a problem. But as the Secretary General in his recent sort of State of the Union, the annual report, the first annual report on NATO has, I think, outlined, the number of successful attacks have gone down dramatically. Now, we don't have to beat the drum excessively, but let's take some credit for that, because without NATO, it would have not been the case. The rates for insurance rates for the ships operating in Mediterranean, which let's not forget, that's still an ongoing operation, the only one in the framework of Article 5, have gone down. That has implications for business. So, point is, Chicago will discuss all of this with the aim of taking, let's say, and Afghanistan, of course, I won't repeat the points made, of course, is on top of the agenda because we need some strategic sort of guidance level. But the truth is, yes, you know, we will, you know, operate in that environment, and we will be doing those things I mentioned. Second strand of criticism is that, well, just let's get real. NATO is not spending enough on defense, and things are getting worse and worse. There are cuts in the US, there are cuts in Europe, and the gap, so to speak, capability is growing. Well, I think Jimmy has given a very good answer to that already, that even with all those, well, still US is primus inter pares, and without European Union and NATO member spending, frankly, you know, you would not be able to even try to tackle the current international security problems, because you would not have those. But the key thing is that, indeed, the initiatives such as the smart defense give a good chance. This is not a slogan, this is a real project. And Secretary General, it's always good for any NATO official to quote the Secretary General, but I think this is very fresh from Munich. I was actually surprised that the media have not picked up that much that part of his speech, because I think it's quite fresh, if you see what I mean. Apart from the smart defense, which is already described by Bogdan and others, there is also what the Secretary General has outlined is the concept of the Connected Forces Initiative. That's very important, because smart defense will address the issue of the sort of the budgetary guidelines, budgetary self-imposed, if you like, you know, tasks, and also, yes, specific projects to do with capability. But then there is a question, how do you organize those capabilities? And that, according to the Secretary General, in view of the real world, yes, the US Defense Review, with all the important consequences of that, with the budgetary strains. What does it mean? We should be in a position to train more, which we need to do, because our forces will be hopefully less engaged in faraway places, which means we'll have to do more exercises. We should be doing more training. There should be, so to speak, consequence in a positive sense for even more integrated ways of doing military education. All of those things should be, and then the technology itself, very important. So, is there a chance? Yeah, is there a chance that all this will succeed? Yes, time is as always. The point is that there's never a guarantee, but if you look at the achievements of NATO in the past, look at the things we have under our belt. The AWACS planes, they are flying. They are protecting very seriously, and that's a collective effort. The decision just made on the acquiring of some of the drones as part of the Allied ground surveillance system, that's a reality. Yesterday, the North Atlantic Council took a decision on the extension and the long-term sustainability of the air policing duty for our three Baltic allies. That's very important, that's concrete. And of course, missile defense in itself, which we hope to reach interim capability, is a very real emanation of the things that NATO the allies can do together. Now, I promise you Russia, relations with Russia, very quickly, but they are important. We don't know whether there will be a NATO-Russia summit. The only honest answer can be provided after the presidential elections to Russia, because our Russian colleagues tell us that's a decision for the new president. Fair enough. Which means we have to wait a bit. And we hope, of course, that there will be such a summit. But irrespective almost of this, the NATO-Russia relationship is important for Chicago. Why? Well, because if we do get agreement on some such issues as missile defense, we can have a project which will be more politically attractive, more politically persuasive, for example, from the point of view of, again, outside partners, those that have all those big questions. Why is NATO doing this? Well, if we do things with Russia, we hope that will be a good model and good sort of explanation, so to speak. Secondly, it would be much more efficient as well, because Russia has things to contribute. We might be having various discussions with Russia and maybe disagree about this or the other aspect, but in a nutshell, if we do things together, we actually get things done much more efficiently, and we've had many successes, and that's core. Let me give very quickly a few examples. And this is, for example, the issue of developing the technology which would enable us to identify improvised explosive devices. This is the so-called Standex project, which is being worked right now. The Cooperative Airspace Initiative. Should be much more publicity about this in this country, because one of the centers for the data exchange, which is already started working between NATO and Russia, is located in Warsaw. The other one is in Moscow. That's very concrete. If the plane goes astray, it's hijacked, we will know what to do. And we had some live exercises on that. The point is, time constraints do not allow me to develop that point, but I hope I've made at least give you some examples. But I want to end on the following observation, coming directly from Moscow. We are at a pretty tricky time when it comes to NATO-Russia relationship, because the rhetoric that I am encountering every day these days in Moscow is the one that I've never encountered before. We've seen a pretty bad one, and Alexei was there after Kosovo, or he was there very briefly after Kosovo because he had to go back to Brussels. But the type of things we hear today really are quite sad. It shows a high degree of the lack of trust. And it's trust that we have to work upon, because the whole relationship is built on that. The type of complaints we hear is that NATO is not listening to Russia. NATO cannot be trusted because we've allegedly promised something we didn't. Well, we tried to explain. And that has consequences, because then you see such decisions announced as the preparations for the placement of Iskanders, which are offensive weapons. These are offensive missiles. In Kaliningrad, there is a whole image of NATO being built, and yes, if one looks at the Russian plans for the defense, raising the defense expenditure, they go contrary to the tendency that has been described today. There's nothing wrong with that, but of course, at least I think it's right to pose some questions. What is this money going to be spent on? Because we're talking about billions. So I think I've raised more questions than I managed to answer them. But in view of the time constraint, I will hand over back the microphone to Bogdan Winit. Thank you very much. Dziękuję bardzo za uwagę.